is getting warmer, and with it, we're seeing a large increase in the number of bicyclists on West Michigan roadways. It's important to both riders and motorists to understand the rules of the road regarding bicyclists, as well as the law, in the unfortunate circumstances that a bicyclist is injured in a crash with a motor vehicle. Unfortunately, the statistics in Michigan show an alarming number of deadly incidents involving cyclists every year. Here to educate us this morning, Grand Rapids bicycle lawyer Tom Sinas from Sinas & Dramus Law Firm, our sponsor. Tom, thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
Okay, let's first start off by talking about the basic rules of the road, what drivers need to know about sharing the road with bicyclists.
You know, the rule really is in the nugget of your question. Drivers are required to share the road with bicyclists. I think sometimes drivers think, what's this bicyclist doing on the road? Why aren't they on the sidewalk? And maybe get a little irritated or agitated. But the law is that drivers do need to share the road with bicyclists. That's where it starts. And then there are some other important rules, some of which have changed recently. So we have a rule now in Michigan about passing a bicyclist. If you're going to pass a bicyclist, you got to give that bicyclist under state law about 3 feet of space as you're going around them. If you can't do that, you still have to keep a safe distance between your vehicle and the bicyclist that you're passing. So drivers are required to yield to bicyclists the same way they would be required to yield to a motorist. So I think the easiest thing to remember for a driver is that the same type of rules that you would need to follow with respect to another motorist are the same type of rules you need to follow with respect to a bike. But when you're passing a bicyclist in particular, remember you've got to give them that proper clearance as you're going around them.
Okay, now that we know the rules for drivers, obviously we talk about sharing the road. That must mean that there are rules and laws for bicyclists as well.
There are, and again, it's the same concept. Bicyclists have to follow the same rules that drivers have to. So, for example, if there's a stop sign and a bicyclist is driving in the road, they have to stop at the stop sign or a stop light. Bicyclists also have some unique rules to themselves. For example, when they're riding on the road, they need to ride as close to the curb, to the right-hand curb, as they can. If they're riding in a group, they can't ride more than 2 abreast. But again, I think the easiest way to remember this here is that because bicyclists and motorists both have the legal right to be on the roadway, they're both required to follow the same set of rules that you would need to follow to keep another motorist safe, for example.
And now let's get a little bit into your expertise. What should happen if, unfortunately, a bicyclist in a crash with a motor vehicle is injured? What are the steps that need to happen when that happens?
Yeah, so in Michigan, this is a very unique circumstance and a very important circumstance for an injured cyclist, because this is where you transition from thinking about the incident as just a bicycle incident and one involving Michigan's auto no-fault law. You might think, well, why that? Well, under Michigan's no-fault law, a person is entitled to receive no-fault benefits, which include medical expenses, lost wages, those type of things, if they're involved in an incident with a motor vehicle. You don't need 2 motor vehicles. So if a bicyclist is involved in an incident with a car that hits the bicycle or runs it off the road, whatever it may be, that car is the operative motor vehicle that then allows the injured cyclist to claim auto no-fault benefits. I think it's easy for cyclists to forget this because they may think, well, I was injured on my bike, so this doesn't have anything to do with auto no-fault. But it does. The moment there's that involvement, as the law says, of a motor vehicle, the cyclist then becomes entitled to receive no-fault benefits. And we've talked about those benefits in past segments, what they are, where they go. But that concept of what we would call entitlement to no-fault benefits is the most important concept for the cyclist. The cyclist also then may have a separate set of legal rights against the motor vehicle in what we might call a liability claim. The idea that if the cyclist is injured because of a driver's negligence or carelessness, and that cyclist has the type of damages that no-fault doesn't pay for, so a change in their quality of life, for example, that cyclist may be able to pursue a claim against the car that struck them. So in that respect, the cyclist needs to think that they are involved in a car crash, and they need to start thinking about their rights in that way.
And that's another question here. We're dealing with the law. We're dealing with laws that are complicated for those of us that are not experts like yourself. So when something like this should happen, God forbid, should we call a lawyer right away, or is this something like, okay, let me get my wits about me, let me get home, and then call? What's the protocol here?
Well, obviously, you need to take care of your immediate needs first, right? Of course, if you need to go to the hospital or see your doctor or get home and get your wits about you, those are the most important things. But I think sometimes people feel, well, I'm a little shy about calling a lawyer. Maybe there's something about that that makes me feel uncomfortable. And my advice, as we've talked about before, is don't feel that way. A law firm like ours, we provide free consultations to people. We try to provide that service as close to 24 hours a day as we can, and there's no charge. So there's no harm that can come from a cyclist calling a law firm like ours, inquiring about the circumstances of their injury, and seeing if it's something we can help them with. Usually, if someone thinks they don't need a lawyer or they're uncomfortable, then that can cause a delay in them getting to a lawyer sooner than later, and that can sometimes result in the loss of important evidence that you might want to gather right away. So my general advice is don't wait, because there's no harm in obtaining that free consultation with a law firm like ours. And if you decide it's not something you want to do, that's okay. Or if the law firm can't help you, we'll tell you that as well.
All right, Tom, thank you for stopping by and giving us your expertise as well.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and we had the contact information up on the screen for you, so we'll post that inside the segment of 8West, inside of woodtv.com. This segment is sponsored by Sinas Dramus Law Firm. We'll be right back with more 8West.